In 2020, tensions soared between China and the United States. Washington blamed Beijing for the pandemic, and the two countries remained locked in a trade war. According to polling by Pew Research Center, 73% of Americans have an unfavorable view of China in 2020. 2021 ushered in a new U.S. president, Joe Biden. Will that mean a more collaborative relationship? I speak with Max Baucus, the former U.S. ambassador to China. Ambassador Baucus served as a U.S. Senator from the state of Montana for 36 years. Under former President Barack Obama, he served as ambassador to China, a position he held from 2014 to 2017. During the pandemic, I spoke to Ambassador Baucus remotely from our offices in Washington, D.C. You have such keen insights into this relationship. So how would you describe the relationship right now between the U.S. and China?
Tense.
Yeah.
Confrontational, difficult. Just insufficient trust going both ways. And all the, the dialogues back and forth between the U.S. and China that had existed in prior years now basically terminated. There are virtually no exchanges. Now that Biden's elected, his Secretary of State's talked to his counterpart, Yang Jiechi in China, and President Biden talked to President Xi. But up to this point, there's virtually nothing. Military exchanges are virtually non-existent. There's much more of that when I was serving in China. The people-to-people exchanges are virtually zero. Journalists are cut back both ways. Consulates closed in the U.S. and in China. It's in a sorry state, frankly. It's very concerning. It's not good at all, and I think it's due partly to the natural shift in tectonic plates in the world. That is, the two largest economies, rising power, established power, and China's very proud of itself, as it should be, given its history. The United States is proud of itself, given our history and who we are. Different perspectives, but still just as proud. But we're different. We're different cultures, we're different people, and there's insufficient exchange between the two countries, and there's more, and there's much less trust between the two countries. And it's unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate. As a senator, Ambassador Baucus served alongside the current U.S. president in the Senate, and he also served as ambassador in the Obama administration when Biden was vice president. You have served as an ambassador, but also you served in the U.S. Senate. You served alongside then Senator Biden when he was from Delaware. You know him. You know how he approaches things. So given what we've seen in the last 4 years, I suspect there's no way it can get worse than it's been over the last 4 years, although perhaps it can. Maybe you have a different viewpoint. Given the type of way he thinks and acts, what do you expect from a Biden foreign policy towards China? Well, I'd like to think that the free fall has been stopped. That now we slowly start to work our way back up to more trust, better relationship. Now, you said that it can't get worse. Well, it could get worse. It's just hard to tell. I mean, there could be an accident, for example, the South China Sea or the Taiwan Straits, which could cause much more significant problems than currently exist. So it could get worse. Now, I've known, as you said, Senator Biden for a long time, President Biden now for a long time. The bottom line is twofold. One, his nature is to want to work with people. He likes to find agreements. He likes to find so-called win-win solutions. He's not an ideologue. He's not going to try to jam something down somebody else's throat, whoever that person is. And that could be another member of the Senate or Congress. It could be a business person in the United States. It could be another country, and include China. You were talking about how he wants to work with people, and that's kind of part of its DNA. And when you say that, it makes it sound like
more of a collaborative relationship, which I know you've talked about for both of these two countries, that they have more of a collaborative relationship. And it takes two to tango, as we know. I mean, there's been some really strong rhetoric on both sides. What would you like to see in terms of words and actions from both sides that might just dial down maybe the temperature somewhat?
Well, I tend to think that there are several answers to that question. One is just take, if not baby steps, small steps at a time. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. You got to kind of work at things, build up trust. It doesn't just happen to be. It takes time to build it up. And we did have trust in the two countries, but it's fallen off dramatically last 5, 6, 8 years. One is reopen the consulates in Chengdu and Houston, and that's an easy one. So each country goes back again, reopens the consulate. That's one. Another is to start to admit more journalists into each country. That'll help. Don't expel journalists. Partly because certainly the United States, with a much more free press, journalists write a lot of stories if they get expelled. So that adds fuel to the fire when journalists have a hard time getting visas in each country. Then I think add to that, this is not news. Many have said this many times, but start working step by step on major global issues that really count, like climate change. More of our countries, because U.S. is rejoining the Paris Accord. That's more symbolic than actions. But the United States and China say, okay, here's maybe some joint efforts we're going to take for renewable energies, develop renewable energies. That'll help too. I was very proud of the efforts between President Xi and President Obama when they agreed on the climate accord. They made an agreement. It was historic, and I was so pleased with that. It's unfortunate that that's fallen off. And then also on the COVID, if we could figure out some way to get more trust on COVID, I think it's almost impossible now, because President Trump could go, the Wuhan virus or the China virus or whatever. And that has caused one of the causes that American people have a much lower view of China today than several years ago. I think that's a lot of it. And so I think China could be more forthcoming and working with the United States and other countries and WHO on not only the origin of the virus, but how to work together to prevent future COVIDs from being developed, from spreading. There's nothing can be done. When I first learned about COVID, I thought, oh, gee, here's a great opportunity for the United States. Call up President Xi, call up China and say, look, we want to help. This is terrible what's going on in China. We want to help you. We want to help you. But unfortunately, President Trump took the exact opposite tack and blamed China.
China is the United States' third largest trading partner for goods, totaling nearly $560 billion in goods traded between the two nations in 2019. The current trade war started in 2018, and since then, the world's two largest economies have imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars. The situation with trade between the U.S. and China, Trump decided, a trade war would be beneficial, has all these tariffs in place. Talk to me about the trade landscape and how do you kind of unravel that, or do you?
Well, I think trade is critical. All boats rise with international trade. And it helps the economies of all countries, generally, as a general proposition. Now, there are dislocations. Different countries are in stronger positions than some others. And that means that, that each country should, responsibly deal with that dislocation and take care of its own people. And it's wrong just to look at a trade deficit as a reason for one country being unfair as opposed to another, as Trump did. President Trump said, oh, gee, China's unfair because of the big trade deficit between the U.S. and China. So China must be at fault. China's sending all those goods over here. The honest answer, and this is very it's abstract, but it's also the truth, that we're a big purchaser of goods worldwide because we borrow so much to finance all our purchases. That's what happens here. And so the United States, well, the United States under Trump had legitimate concerns with China. We know the list. Basically, China subsidizes its companies' production too much from the American perspective, and I might say from the European perspective. SOEs are subsidized too much by the government. Add to that, there's insufficient market access. It's hard for American companies to sell. Best examples, frankly, so the technology companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, you just can't get into China. And then there's some, forced technology transfers is often on the list, IP infringements on the list. And so Donald Trump said, okay, well, he's going to do something about that by slapping tariffs on Chinese products coming into the United States. Well, that didn't do any good, I don't think. Basically, that hurt Americans more than would have been the case if the tariffs not been put on Chinese products coming to the United States. China retaliated. That hurt Americans too.
Talking about trade, you mentioned, these incendiary words, the China virus, that sort of thing. But you've been in the political arena a long time. You've been in the diplomatic world for a while as well. Here in the United States, I talked to former President Jimmy Carter about this, that when people run for president of the United States, they tend to demonize, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, demonize China. They're an easy target to go after. It works well with the domestic audience. But normally they tack back because they recognize the importance of this relationship and that it's kind of symbiotic in certain ways. You've traveled to every province in China. I mean, the Chinese people, you've talked about them, you've talked about China. But most people in Montana and elsewhere around the United States haven't. And this is their view of China, what they hear every election. What's the harm of that?
Well, the harm is, it's pretty clear. The harm is it just causes distrust between the two countries. The harm is we can't reach agreements. The harm is that we're still, the deterioration increases. It's not just presidents, but it's also the internet, social media. It's just harder for people to keep an open mind. People tend to be tribalized. They tend to stay in their little silos. They tend to just to communicate with people they agree with, not listen to people that they may not agree with. I think the internet has added to the greater difficulty of a president after he runs and demonizes China, to then turn around and try to work out a deal. It's harder today. It's much harder today than it was when Jimmy Carter was president. I love Jimmy Carter to death. He's a great guy. and George Bush too. I mean, and Bill Clinton, they all demonized China. But after they got elected, they said, oh, gee, I got to work with this country. It's harder today for American president to pivot.
Ambassador, it's been a delight chatting with you. Such great insights. Thanks so much for visiting with us.
Very well, thank you.